So, horizon scanning, what is it? Why is it important? How can we use it? And how can we reap the benefits? Our session today is going to go through some best practice areas, some good practice from other industries, and how you can potentially take it away and use it yourselves. I'm Richard Holt, as Alex introduced there. I'm Head of Risk and Internal Audit at Portakabin. I'm also a board member of AIRMIC. Hand over to Dean.
Hi, I'm Dean Hughes. I am a partner and practice head for risk advisory and analytics at Barnett Waddingham. I've been in risk management and technology for about 20 years now, and I've worked as a consultant with over 50 or 60 clients, and have implemented horizon scanning at most of them. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of those good things and bad things that I've learned.
Thanks, Dean. So let's start. What is horizon scanning?
So, I mean, there are lots of definitions of horizon scanning, and you can interpret it various different ways, but I think I'd rather describe the characteristics of what horizon scanning is from the way I've seen our peers describe them. And also I'd like to describe what horizon scanning isn't. So horizon scanning is the proactive, forward-looking activity, looking for risks which would actually be new, and this is the key point, new to your organisation. What it isn't is looking for risks that your organisation is already carrying. That's BAU. That's what we're already doing. So, and another key characteristic is around, we're looking at risks that are further afield, beyond the usual horizons. So beyond our corporate annual budgeting cycle, beyond our strategic cycle, much further in the distance. And horizon risks themselves, they come about, they arise from when your organisation goes into a new sector, a new jurisdiction, or adopts a new operating model, business model. And horizon risks arise when the social space or the economy or the environment in which you're operating in changes around you as well.
Great, thanks, Dean. And I guess the time horizon, as you mentioned, could be anything from a few months for an IT company to many, many years, depending on different organisation and sectors. So what's the difference between horizon scanning and scenario analysis?
I think Rebecca alluded to this earlier, actually, but horizon scanning is the qualitative bit. It's just the thinking about what's next, and the scenario analysis is what my actuaries do back at Barnett Waddingham, which is the modelling, the impact on once that risk comes about.
Great stuff. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I get confused between horizon scanning and emerging risks. So how would you define emerging risks?
Well, emerging risks aren't just new to our organisations, to your organisation. Emerging risks are new to the world. I've heard emerging risks defined as risks which we don't yet have a body of knowledge and understanding about it. That they're called frontier risks by the World Economic Forum. Emerging risks often have unknown likelihoods and unknown impacts, and they're named as such because emerging risks arise from as humans push new frontiers. They include things like the militarization of space and AI superintelligence.
You mentioned the superintelligence there. I've heard sort of quantum computing being a risk. Is that a horizon risk, or do you think it's an emerging risk?
Quantum computing, I think it could be both for us. From what I understand of quantum computing, it's in 10 to 15 years' time, it will be more accessible and attainable for a lot of us, a lot of organisations. And if that's the case, if that is true, then a lot of the cyber security measures we have in place today are going to be completely obsolete. And at the same time, though, quantum computing is an emerging risk because we actually don't really know what it's going to look like and what it's going to mean for us. But I just want to make the point again that horizon scanning isn't just these big, exciting, meaty emerging risks we like to talk about. Horizon scanning is simply looking at what's going to be new in the pipeline for our organisation, and quite often, horizon risks for you, may not be new to others. So there's going to be information available out there for you to see what's going on.
Great. And is there any sort of simple ways to remember horizon scanning risks? So when I'm talking, or when people around the room are talking to our executive and our boards, is there anything simple you can suggest that people get it quite quickly?
So there's for horizon scanning, there is one of my partners, Damien at Barnett Waddingham. He doesn't like to use any jargon, so he often talks about the now, the next, and the new. So you can see where this is going. The now being, the risks that we face today. The next being the risks on the horizon, and the new being the emerging risks that we get to comprehend. And in terms of horizon risks, there are 4 characteristics which I will sense check to see if something is a horizon risk when talking about horizon risks. And those 4 common characteristics are: is it plausible? Is it plausible? Is it relevant to our organisation? Is it new to our organisation? And is it beyond our usual time horizon?
Great, thanks, Dean. So when do we start managing and assessing and bringing them into the BAU? Because obviously these horizon risks will eventually get to the horizon.
Yeah, that's a good point. So of course, you're looking at these horizon risks, and they're risks that you're not managing right now. You'd often want to put, you want to monitor these things. So it's good to document these horizon risks down, to articulate how they're relevant to your organisation, or how they could be relevant to your organisation, and to articulate and document when they could plausibly be carried by your organisation. And then you can write down the conditions that need to be met, and the triggers, and then you just monitor those. And once of course that risk becomes a risk for your organisation, you would go through the usual process thereafter.
Have you got any sort of examples that you've come across that bring that to life?
Yeah, I've got quite a few, but one I'll share today is it's rather close to home. It's my own organisation, my own firm, Barnett Waddingham. So we're an actuarial and risk consulting firm, been around for 30 years, and out of all the various sectors that we work in, defined benefits, pensions is a sector that was a big part of our business, and it's a type of pension scheme which is being phased out. So we took a few years ago, we took the initiative to look into our own future. Being actuaries, it's inherent in how we do things at the firm, but we looked 15, 20 years time, and we saw that in about 15 years time these types of schemes, the market is actually going to start to shrink. So we identified that as a horizon risk, and going through those 4 characteristics, this was plausible because we know that memberships to these types of schemes are being closed. We know that it's very unlikely that there's going to be a resurgence of new schemes being set up for this. It was relevant to us because at the time of horizon scanning, time of this activity, it was the biggest area and biggest business stream for our firm. And the third characteristic around is it beyond our horizon? Well, our strategic cycle is usually about 5 years. This was 15 years away. In fact, it was so far away, most of the partners at the time, it was actually beyond the dates that they were planning to retire. And the fourth thing is it new to our organisation? Well, it's going to be new to our organisation because all we've known for 30 years is growth in this market. But it's not a new one. Once again, it's not a new one to the world because other organisations have experienced having to diversify. And without this horizon scanning, we wouldn't have looked at a new strategy. We wouldn't have sped up our investment in diversification. Essentially this highlighted the fact that we wanted to maintain and the heritage of our actuarial and data science and risk and governance skills and use them in other markets. We wanted to still be around in 20 years' time is what we decided. And without that, I wouldn't have joined the firm 4 years ago to work in risk advisory. So to summarise, this was a catalyst for us looking to the future and for us changing our ways. We use words like diversification and evergreen now in our in our business planning and our strategy and our vision. So yeah, just to reiterate, that was a good example because it was plausible, it was relevant, it was new to our organisation, it was beyond the usual horizon for us.
Great, thank you. And just to ask the obvious question, why is it important and who's it important to?
Why is it? I think, if you remove all the jargon and the risk nerdiness, I think it's just important because just getting our colleagues to think about what's next, can really be a step change in how people are thinking. Just having those conversations alone with our colleagues in IT and finance and so on and so forth, even just temporarily might remove those annual budget blinkers that we all suffer from when we're doing the day job. Even just for a few moments to sense check what are these massive transformation projects we've got going on. Like, is that actually going to be the right thing for us to do? Is it going to help us be able to take on the future risks that are heading our way? And for firms who've afforded to take that longer term view, horizon scanning, with or without risk professionals, is part of strategic planning, vision, purpose statements. It's well known that horizon scanning is a major component for lots of innovation activities, like value proposition design. It's horizon scanning is all about readiness for the future, and you can't be ready if you're not looking to what's next.
Great, thanks. Hint and tip for everybody: get yourselves involved in business planning processes in your own firms, because I think that's where some of this starts. And who is it important to, do you think? Who's sort of the key sort of users of this information?
There are lots of stakeholders it's important to. You can name sort of clients, regulators, investors, owners, to name a few, because having those long-term plans, knowing what's on the horizon and planning for what's on the horizon can give confidence to all of these people in terms of the long-term viability of an organisation, the resilience of an organisation. If you're a CEO of a scale-up, how are you, or if trying to get new funding, or if you're a partner at a law firm who wants to, sell your shares, your goodwill to the next generation, how are you supposed to be able to do that and convince those people to invest if you can't tell them, that your business has considered what's next and is ready for it?
Great, thank you. And what do you think the practical benefits are to us as risk and insurance managers?
The practical benefits for us specifically, it's the output of horizon scanning activities which we benefit from. It could be a list of horizon risks which you hand over to your business continuity team so they can run their scenario playbooks. It could be a briefing to the actuarial and risk teams so that they can then model some of these horizon risks to the impact if they were to be carried by the organisation. Rebecca did talk about this briefly earlier on. We're seeing the same. Lots of people are taking the horizon risks such as big macroeconomic change and climate change and modelling those. I work with a lot of general counsels, and the type of horizon scanning that I do with them and implement for them is around regulatory scanning. So that's essentially putting together the pipeline of all the obligations for all the jurisdictions they work in, for the next couple of years. And the practical output for them from that is essentially their roadmap, their job, their tasks for the next couple of years, all the policies and procedures that they need to implement. And on that note, if you are looking at regulatory scanning, a way to look even further beyond the usual horizon is to actually look at what other sectors have been doing and what regulation is coming in other countries, because the regulation decisions on new regulation in other countries and other sectors today will likely be our regulation for ourselves for tomorrow, because we've seen this post 2008 when there was a lot of new regulation coming in around better governance and better risk management, starting with financial services. And over the next 10-15 years, we've seen that has trickled down to all these other sectors. We're seeing the same right now about ESG reporting, and operational resilience is starting to come out and come into regulation.
Great. So I think Horizon Scanning, do you think it can help with risk culture, bringing a culture of risk to an organisation, and getting people on board and engaged?
Horizon Scanning is definitely a door opener. I think as risk professionals, it's our job, or it can be our job, to have to implement what I call risk by design. So that's risk management up front, rather than just being the firefighters who are called just before a risk, or just after a risk turns into an issue. And I know that, risk professionals who've partnered with their colleagues, in other areas, to get them to start thinking about the next rather than the now, have since been invited or have elbowed their way into the room. So actually, when a new project, a new office, a new product, a new strategy is being developed, they are part of that and advising. Sometimes Horizon Scanning is the reason for those initiatives. And equally, no one listens to the homegrown, soothsayer. So actually, I've seen, and I've been used like this, but I don't mind. I've seen, professional, colleagues in other areas will call up their risk team or their outsourced risk team to come in and do the Horizon Scanning, just to validate their thoughts and help them build a business case for the budget they need for their, their transformation programs. This whole thing, it does improve risk culture because it repositions us as strategic advisors, and it brings in, that risk management by design again.
Great, yeah. I think in some organisations, like an organisation I've joined, it's quite sort of risk immature, I would say. So where would you suggest I start? Organisations that don't have this embedded, where would we start on this?
Well, you wouldn't be alone with that. That's usually the starting point for everyone. So ideally, obviously, you'd work with whatever area, department, project that you're supposed to be a part of, and then bring in any experts, depending on the risk. But yeah, you're right. That doesn't often happen. But you can just start alone in your silo. I know a firm who they just kicked off Horizon Scanning with just the risk team and a few friendly faces, a few risk champions, came up with a list of potential Horizon risks, and the next reporting cycle put it straight in front of the exec, and it piqued the exec's interest, and the exec then mandated them to go out and commission the research, and gave them the time to go through all of the analysis thereafter, and they even the exec partook in the prioritisation. So that's a great example of you just starting out on your own and educating the demand. Another good point, which I think you alluded to earlier, Richard, was and a good starting point is business planning cycle. A lot of organisations, in my experience, all of the managers and heads of departments and so on and so forth, they'll get given a template once a year saying, like, what's your budget? What are your plans? What size team do you need? And as risk professionals, we will tend to append to that another thing saying, and what are your risks for the next year? And I think that that time and that process is an opportunity for us to add some horizon scanning questions. And I know the purists among us will say, oh, we should always be horizon scanning. But getting our colleagues to lift their heads up from the now and look to the next, even just once a year, I mean, it can't be sniffed at. It's a good opportunity. It's a good opportunity to do that. And with those questions, you can throw those horizon questions into your risk ID. You can throw them into your business impact assessments, and you could even put them out in a survey, a pulse survey, if you're really struggling. And
have you got some examples of some questions to ask in that sort of space?
The questions, they're not too dissimilar from the questions we're already asking. The usual questions like, what are the risks and opportunities that are going to impact your ability to meet your area's objectives or your organisation's objectives. I think the questions you had just have to add a bit more context. It's if we continue as we are today with our current operating model and our current planned activities, then what are the risks and opportunities that may be relevant and plausible to your field, to your area, to your remit, to your organisation, and and what are the skills and resources that we need as an organisation to be able to take these risks.
Great, and I think shock of shocks. Well, if nobody's interested in the horizon scanning, what do you do? How do you engage people in those situations?
As we alluded to earlier on, there's various things that you can do. You know, you can start it by yourself. You can pique their interest by doing some research. I think that, you know, that there are some good frameworks out there as well. So in regard to frameworks, lots of consulting firms will have a framework, and you know, and they're all good. They're all very similar to each other. The frameworks usually entail some initial horizon risk identification, so some research, interviews, surveys, and then bringing in some subject matter experts to validate. You know, and the subject matter experts can be internal as well. And then, you know, working with the leadership and coming up with what's plausible and relevant and prioritising. And, you know, those are good ways to engage the leadership team, because the output of that it tends to be very, very practical recommendations for future strategy. You know, and I fully support those frameworks, but actually there's a lot of stuff we can do without having to implement an all singing, all dancing framework. There's some really simple things that we can do which can A, engage people, and B, you know, are really effective. And the simplest thing is, you know, is just speaking to people, just going around and speaking to your organisation. If you don't do any of the other stuff that we're talking about or that you've read about in terms of horizon scanning, just go and speak to everyone at your organisation. Get your team, if you've got a team, to go and speak to everyone, because you're going to have subject matter experts peppered throughout everywhere, and they're all going to have opinions, they're all going to have a view of the horizon from when they're sitting. You know, you're going to get that diversity of thought and perspective and harness all of that. A client of mine, she does this religiously, week in, week out. She will make sure she speaks to a handful of people across her business, you know, and she picks up the horizon risks, she picks up the current risks, she picks up issues just as they're unfolding. And speaking to people is, you know, speaking to your peers, coming to events like this, you know, going to the to special interest groups. So MX holds sector-specific ones, you know, and just going to those people and asking them, you know, asking your peers, you know, what do you reckon's coming down the line for us? What's over the hill? I used to work with quite a few banks a few years back, and I used to meet up with on a regular basis, meet up with some money laundering reporting officers. We'd go to the pub, we'd have a little bit of a whinge about work, but then we would informally share with each other the types of transaction, the types of jurisdiction, the types of clients that were coming down the pipeline, that were, you know, were going to be money laundering risks for us. In fact, sometimes we'd share some risks that we'd encountered, which we knew were then going to be going their way. So yeah, I think speaking to people. Yeah. That's my long-winded answer to that question. No,
I think that's great. I think speaking to people has to be the key on this. Thanks, Dean. I'm going to sort of summarise this sort of session today. Hopefully it's helpful. First one, horizon scanning can be defined as proactive, forward-looking activity, identifying new risks to the organisation. Generally 4 characteristics: plausible, relevant, beyond the normal time horizon, which may be different for your own organisations, and again is new to the organisation. And the one way to start it is start with friendly faces, start with departments that will engage on this, that you can use, that you can test against, that you can sort of build your list of horizon risks. And just noting, this is something that most of your exec and board are probably going to get more and more interested in if they're not already interested in it. And finally, if you've got any questions, it's break time now. Come and talk to Dean, come and talk to me, and thank you for your time.